the thing about abazali not being willing participants in our healing journey, and this goes back to that whole conversation about the African Renaissance and what we need to become as Africans. No, not that we're obliged to. We've already given so much to the world and civilization. But one thing we have to realize is that the structure of our society as it is, and that's why when you don't fit in, for me, it shouldn't trouble you that much, because it's a recent thing if you judge the timeline of our existence. A billion years old compared to, for instance, 400 years of colonization. Why would such a small fraction preoccupy such a big part of your day, where you say, no, we are like this because we were colonized, we were like this because, it's just a small fraction of your whole genetic memory, of your whole spiritual memory. Why would you want to focus on it? It's a choice. Obviously, it seems like we are at a disadvantage because of that colonization, but the disadvantage is only at a psychological level, because we don't really need that form of economic achievement. Because inclusive in this economic achievement is you are better than him, right? Success means you get more than he gets. That's what it means. A bigger house, smaller car, or more food, or whatever. But success, as of today, means you get access to better than he gets access. As a premise to organizing society, we are saying umuntu ngabantu, right? So where does the whole thing? And it's a genetic thing. Ma umuntu, you can't help wanting to see other people better off. Whether outside your experience through uveza imali window, say robotini, or donating to an orphanage or whatever. It's more so for healers, because it's more like amadlozi akho and that whole multidimensional experience that wants to be umuntu ngabantu. You find yourself sitting endlini kungena umuntu akokota afuna usizo, not because you send out an advert to say I'm helping people here, but somehow amadlozi arrange that you help such and such, and that's when mawuthola abo izangoma nabo gobela who don't understand the beyond spiritual relationship of the gobela and sangoma, and then they say mina itwasa this, or mina ugobela wami this, as if you guys don't have a bigger relationship besides the egos. Ipetlo can become what Ipetlo becomes, but you and your gobela are related at a much higher dimension than the egos. And if everything has been done according for you to end up in that space, it means then whether niyazwana no gobela or anzwana, you guys are related at a much bigger. Even with clients, it becomes that conversation to say, akekho umuntu onga end up endumbeni yami angathunyelwanga amadlozi. So I cannot treat them based on the stimulations of their ego to say une attitude or uyahlupheka or unemali, forgetting the other dimensions of their being. Mhlawumbe angafika la anganamali, but does it mean amadlozi wakhe awanamali? Does it mean her whole or his whole experience is poverty? So I can't then view your experience and say, now act based on your experience. I have to take into consideration that multidimensionalism and to say, yes, siyabhekana manje siyabonana, but amadlozi akho are sitting with you, amadlozi am are sitting with me, and. So it becomes a bigger relationship now.
In relationship, yeah, bantu nabokobela is the trickiest, in that I think and they walk their separate ways, because bahamba bayogucula but labanye bayinena lokuguqula but lokusala usala
uhlala naleyo disharmony.
yeah so akude lokuyohlangana bese kuthiwa gobela wami mina wangithwasisa kabi or gobela wami ini but it's also based on that on the egos sibisele lapho on the egos because esikhathini lesiningi futhi labantu abahluya getha onabo gobela babo is one is people who ba la bafika nemadloti lamakhulu labathi nemadloti amakhulu mina mina angigobi mina bekungafuneki ukuthi ngiyomgobela or ngigobele abantu lami ligobo ya mina lami yalifuna igoba angithafuna ngiguguce I think is ngilelodloti lakho uva ngalelodloti lakho noma nguwe you know it's just your ego at play here and also laba hamba uyogucula naloguculele khona you always have issues. That is the one thing that I have learned. Kuthi umuntu leke ngammitha nyalo hamba uyogucula lo happy lapha afika waguculela khona nakhona unema issues which that brings me back to the fact that to the understanding that it has nothing to do with idlozi lakho which you perceive wena ukuthi idlozi lakho. It is the ego. It is the ego that your ego yakho legijimisako because kokuqala nje lokhu the experience yokuthwasa yekukubuyisa is about humility and mangabe ungakhona ukuthatha ego yakho like you were saying akusindwe lembi but ungakhona kuyidonsa kuyibopha and learn humility, learn to be humble. Vele utohlala unaleyo nkinga leyo. It doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter ukuthi uthwasiswe ngibaphi. And ngiko futhi lapho utawukhanza khona ukuthi uba sangoma lesingasebenzi. Hayi ukuthi bathi manje abengiho la kunabathi nebengithwasela ukuthi kutophila mina and my lineage. Uba sangoma nje lesingasebenzi because the first thing idlotle latiko kugoba latiko is humility latiko that the one thing that it recognizes kuba ngumuntu ngebantu
is to harmonize the whole coexistence. Mina Gogo, I think we have to at some point get into the whole thing of iphehlo. Emakhosini, there's this thing we refer to called emptying your cup, where we highlight the cup as the ego and the contents of the cup as the characteristics of this ego. Lo mina, ukuthi unani la ngaphakathi, mina this, mina that, mina that. But what we have to say to especially izangoma is that isangoma is a servant, in my understanding. Isangoma is a servant, and the process of iphehlo is meant to fine-tune your serving abilities. Is meant to make you a better servant, and how good or bad that education goes depends on your resistance to that fine-tuning. There are certain things you have to go to a pephleni with, especially psychologically, because you already have the biology necessary. You already have the biology necessary to do it. The spirit has been waiting for you on the other side in any case. Hence you find abantu to hey, because they have been waiting. It's just that when you had to get there biologically, whether through growing up age, according to your age, or coming to accept you've got a calling. But the biggest thing is, for me, especially with the experience recently, is that uyisangoma, yes, right? Wena the person, maybe let's attach ubungoma to the ego, but everything else is not you. In that the gift is not yours, And that's why there's always a sponsor of the gift. To say, ubani umnikazi womsebenzi. And mina, when I explain those dynamics, I go very slowly. To say, kukhona umkhulu noma ugogo noma both or a collective who decided to give you isikhwama. Right? So when you are on the other side of the gifting, you are the recipient. This gift is yours as soon as you accept it, but it was not yours before it was given to you. So that awareness has always have to drive into zakho zamadlozi to say, akusisikhwama sami lesi. Right? Akusisikhwama sami lesi. First, you have to acknowledge that. And if you are lucky, umnikazi wesikhwama will then breathe on or inspire what you do with that sikhwama. But if at this point in time, akusisikhwama sakho lesi, what that means is that at a certain point in time, back in the past, he was also in the same position, or she was also in the same position as you are, ube recipient of that sikhwama esinikwa ngabanye. So multidimensionalism then means you cannot focus so much on this person who was once a recipient himself. Because you might find that he has infused a lot of his ego kulo msebenzi, which overshadows the spiritual memory of this sikhwama. Yabo, mhlambe yena ubelapha kakhulu due to preference, ubelapha kakhulu ngamanzi. Yabo? And then as you phehla and then uthwasa, you discover ukuthi lesikhwama sistrong ngamanzi. But that's not the original way of ukusebenza kwalesikhwama. It was his preference, and he might have had certain circumstances which were, factors of that preference. But when you have an inclusive view of lesikhwama, you are able to see even other preferences of abanye abantu abake banikwa lesikhwama, and it incorporates everyone's way of healing into your perspective. Makuvela, for instance, thina masithwasa, you had a yes or a no situation, you had left or right situation. You could only get ithambo eliyi-1. So it's either uthatha umsebenzi wakabomama or uthatha umsebenzi wakabobaba, yabo. But you couldn't have two bones. And what it did is you overemphasize labantu, the chromosome related to ithambo lakho. So if utholeka right, it means bantu bakabobaba will be the dominating party to isikhwama sakho. But you also have the X is present. And remember, it's pairs, so they need to work in pairs so that there's conducive activation. So if you overemphasize abakabobaba, it means abakabomama will always be undervalued, and that's where you have a toxicity ebungomeni, where you find the good and the bad characteristics of the side like abobaba becomes more. It becomes exacerbated if that's the way it. Then lezi ezinye cannot uthola ukuthi kuthiwa isithunywa sala ekhaya simbozekile or asihlambululukanga because bantu bakabomama beze nesithunywa, yabo into ezinjalo. And uthola ukuthi umkhulu waye thwasisa ngomkhonto, wayegwaza ngomkhonto kakhulu. So you end up uyisangoma somkhonto manje because by your awareness you've overemphasized one part over the other. Or you've overemphasized one ancestry over, So it's very important to know these things and say, okay, isikhwama bathi sibuya kumkhulu ozala umkhulu. It's good, man, it's well, know about him, learn, activate some of those memories, umpuphe, umbone, all of those things. But always ask yourself, ubuyaphi yena? And usithathephi isikhwama? Sibuyaphi lesikhwama, and what was the experience and the memory of those different times when this kwama was being handed under. And guess what? Once you have that intention, they start revealing these things to you. Say, no, usebenza ngomfula yena, but ukhona wayesebenza ngomlotha. And then they come forth, lo wayesebenza ngomlotha. Then they show you, hey, nangisebenza so. And because when you touch on the left and you touch on the right, you find a much bigger experience of ukwelapha, because all amadlozi wakho are part of experience yakho yokwelapha. So akekho ukhalayo uthi hathi nasinakiwe. Yabo, again you have a multi-dimensional harmony of umsebenzi wamadlozi. But again, when I go, there's another forward-looking aspect of it, in that, in as much as when uthatha isikhwama manje, at some point you will have the privilege of handing down isikhwama, because we must all accept when we're going to die, right? That's one decision we took when we were born. Yeah, so at some point uzawushona nawe, uzakwenziwa rituals, you'll grow into the hierarchies of, beyond spirit, and then uzawuthunywa nawe kuthiwa hey, cela uxolo, nangu umntwana kazana emvula 4 generations later, yebo, hamba uyomnikela isikhwama. At some point now uzawumnikeza isikhwama. So once you accept that fact, then you kind of want to, hey, ngifuna ukuhand over isikhwama esinjani. Those questions come into the space now. What type of isikhwama am I going to hand over? Am I going to hand over isikhwama sokuvilapha, isikhwama sokwencena, isikhwama sobuthakathi, isikhwama, which is still sizawuhlupha abantwana? Or am I going to hand over, something that is going to actually empower umntwana? Then you want to do what? You want to then build this word, man, I don't like it a lot, but you build a legacy into this kwama that is going to make it, a pleasure and a privilege for leso sangoma which must serve leso sikhwama to actually take it. Ile zikhwama lezo uthola abantu bathi mina I don't even need to go to ephehlweni, I just need to ngena emanzini phume then singaqala ukusebenza, because lo wayephethe lesikhwama did such a great job, about this kwama, that it doesn't need a lot of work. But once usebenza ngesikhwama esinjani, yeah, then lo yasizamgulisa simthini, and by the time asithatha will be so traumatized that they can't even work with that sikhwama, because all they remember is gobela wangenzani, iphehlo langenzani, and that memory is sitting spiritually and genetically in leso sikhwama.
Good as kwama low pure sona that you've.
So you first have to have a backward looking view and go as far as you can, but also have a forward looking view.
Mkhulu, where you are at is a topic that has, wow, that's been sitting very heavily on me.
Yeah.
Yes, kwama, the kwama that we have received, and how we are actually also, because akusho ukuthi ngoba lesikhwama lengisireceivile sita nale trauma sita nani, now I have to perpetuate that. Ngiyokhuluma ngokulapha isikhwama, ngiyokhuluma ngokulashwa kwetangoma ukuthi silapheke. And for me, kakhulu kulamalanga it's been what's been sitting on my spirit in the yetshwala netangoma. It's alcoholism, is substance abuse, and how we actually have gotten to a point where some of tangoma are glorifying this thing. Yetshwala. Sithi mina ngikhona ukusebenza ngingakanathi, hayi mina nginathisa gogo. Noma umuntu ayi ukuthi uyasebenza.
Esamihlele siyambomba.
Hayi ukuthi kube unatha ukuthi okay ke nginathisa gogo, I can't work ngingakanathi. Uyanatha nje. It's not like usokunathela ukuthi uyobona iclient sisibone ukuthi okay vele kumbe unathela gogo. Sithakwa nje semuntu. But uthi hayi idlozi lami mina. Fanele ukuthi idlozi lami elikhulu, odlozi lami it's the same thing. Idlozi lami mina unathisa gogo so much or such that you can't even work. You're not doing umsebenzi wedloti.
It's toxic.
It's toxic. Two, noma ngabe uyasebenza senguwena you are traumatizing ungobela. traumatizing lamathwasa aphatheka kabuhlungu bantwana bedlodi kakhulu when you are drunk bantwana baphathwa kabi lakhaya bakhuliswa kabuhlungu and ubakhulisa nawe ngale perception yokuthi idlodi liyanathelwa idlodi liyadzakelwa or any other substance abuse seyintfo lesiyipherpetrator sibangoba into le frustrator ukuthi one it's kuba umsebenzi wedlodi lo wendekayo esikhathini lesiningi. Two, kuba lobubi balesikhwama, so now masizohenda over sikhwama yohenda over sikhwama
more trauma,
lesimdaka
and violence.
True. And then the next thing is leto tangoma leto also ngito, because now there's this habit to support. They are cheating, they do anything and everything to get money out of my clients. Sibabendisa netinto letingasiko necessary kuba nemali to level abakwendi kahle because they are drunk. They're drunk. So the things that are being done is to support, to get money to support this habit. One. And two, basebaboleka imali kula bantwana bebantu. That is another thing. Le mali bolekolani bolekonathi. So it brings disrepute to this healing craft. To lo msebenzi, this sacred craft leyashiwa abantu labadzala. Noma belesikhwama besimdaka siyasho ukuthi isikhwama siyagezeka so that nawuto khona ukushiya si right. But we want to perpetuate lo bubi, you know, and this way you have brought us to actually now for me is just brought back this heavy message that has been sitting on me that actually I have been, because and you're like, you know, I'm going, but I'm going to be the most unpopular sangoma in the world.
Yeah.
But then because I think then you start now discussing and having to share this message, and now you are sharing it. And then two, also mawukhuluma ngekuthi nekuthi siya lesikhwama sifike kubani wasebenzisa kanjena lomnye ipreference yakhe bekungemandi. It brings me back to the topic yesithunywa and how sithi sikhuluma ngesithunywa basikhuluma ngesithunywa sikhulume about the Christian element or the Christianity element, and ukuthi this is how they ended up practicing because of the laws of the country at that time. It actually also speaks to that. This kwama that was received, you've actually just explained it in a different way, but it's the same thing. This kwama seglapa, there's still people who received that kwama leto bahamba bayosebenzisa enkonzweni or basebenzisa in the Christian way. That's what it's brought to me. Which then that then became the preferred way for them, or the only way that they could actually use the totikwab. It speaks to how actually spirit is very innovative in actually getting the things that need to be done to actually be done in whatever the circumstances.
Hey, in the Mkhulu, Gogo, I think for me, as I look at it, and Abu Gogo, best trainer now recently, I mean, are victims of this form of observation. To say, if we were to make an example, njoba kuthiwa uthatha isikhwama, uthatha ipurse or uthatha i-bag, handbag, or uthatha i-luggage. First, you have to determine that. What type of isikhwama is this? And again, that memory is somewhere in your being, whether biological or spiritual, but someone is there to tell you exactly what you inherited, right? So it's a question of hlambulula in the right manner, and also once and this is the purpose of humility. It's very difficult to pour onto something that is higher than the source of whatever needs to be poured. For instance, if we were to take lejege and Ebono City Taylor Mans, then the glass is this high, how is it supposed to happen? Exactly. So it does melelehle kuphakamiswe ijeke so that the information can flow, the water can flow from top to bottom. And if you watch nature, the rain falls from top to bottom. River streams fall from, seeds fall from top to bottom. So, exactly. So that is the purpose of humility. Well, people have interpreted it to mean mangena, mina ukubela, walking on air, and then the rest of you must just fall down. But sometimes I even forgot to ukubela, and the only reminder that hey, when I was was when people started kneeling. I said, oh, by the way, but what it does when Gogo is you have to ascertain what are you inheriting. And I mean, as people who own bags, you know a good quality bag, you know a bad quality bag, you know a beautiful bag, you know an ugly one. You have to ascertain that mautatis kwama to say, yoy, bang niga labantu. And not for purposes of responding, to say, ha, Dr. I'm running away. Ascertain what type of a gift are you getting. And then, if you are fortunate enough, have an intention on this comment to say, okay, I was given a small spatch like this. You couldn't even 55 rand, but I'm going to leave a Louis Vuitton luggage for the next person who's supposed to inherit this.
Carry all.
Multi-dimensional, different types, all sorts of bags for all sorts of purposes. And abantu who, I always worry about people who are in a rush to win umsebenzi wamahlose. Because I believe in the same way as the nose is sitting here because there were biological instructions for it to sit here and nowhere else. I believe spiritually amadlozi determine where exactly you're supposed to do umsebenzi wabantu abadala. How well you do it then is an individual decision. And abantu abaningi, as soon as they know ukuthi bayizangoma, they rush to the river, they rush to slaughter goats, they rush to do this. Did you listen to abantu abadala ukuthi bafuna wenzeni? Because you have to get that instruction and get it, well, sometimes it comes over years, but you have to get exactly what the instruction is that you are inheriting. Uzomuntu athi mina ngisebenza ngomguni. In the context of umuntu ngabantu, and that being the spiritual way of existence in Africa, where we exist as a collective and not as individuals. Where would you find idlozi lihamba lodwa? And hence the surname, right? You are here as uceli, but you come from, then the surname, it goes back. So obviously lo mnguni ubuya somewhere. And for the fact ukuthi lo mnguni uhamba yedwa or lo mdawo uhamba yedwa, it talks to an experience that was not, maybe harmonious. Don't just say ngisebenza ngomnguni, amanye amadlozi can take a hike. Fine tune and find out, but you meditator, you center yourself and find out ukuthi yini umnguni ahamba ayi-1. If we are isangoma thithi isangoma wena kumele uthwase umnguni akumelanga uthwase whatever. Obviously if you don't have knowledge of how those things work, you'll accept it. But I would be very scared of umnguni ohamba yedwa outside the presence of amanye amadlozi. Umdawo hamba wodwa or isithunywa esihamba sodwa. What that then says is, once someone says you have a calling or you have a gift, the trigger should be, okay, which one is coming forth and why is it, jumping over others? And again, don't judge it and say, something strong. Therefore, yes, it's coming forth, but there might be reasons to it. And then you go down, uyaphahla, uyabuza. Bantu abadala, yini lo ungathi qhamuka kuqala, yebo? Yini ngathi makuhlahlutshwa uyathula lo, akaphenduli, yebo? But you kind of have to seek a sort of like a multi-dimensional perspective to those things as well. Yabo? Kuthiwa no wena unikwe isikhwama sesithunywa kumele usebenze kakhulu ngesithunywa. Baphi laba abanye? Amanguni aphi? Amandawo aphi? Amagedla aphi? Yabo? Omunye uzothi okay, are you saying sonke isangoma sinawo wonke the different types of gift? All I'm saying is it's critical for sonke isangoma to ask who is here and relevant to my experience, so that when I hand over, I don't inherit a luggage set and only hand over the toiletry bag. Yeah, so you have to ask those questions, and again, I mean, the traditions of Ubungoma as they are now, I mean, you spoke to Uchwala, they are not encouraging of that type of thinking. Maunomguno strong, it's almost as if you must stick with that mguni, ukite, utini, and that's the end of it. And that's why when you go to different parts of the continent, only one way of healing is embraced over the other. And even so, when you highlight the other, it's almost as if, that's not healing. I remember last Besiste East London, and someone was saying, Amdau is not recognized in East London. Once wangathi ukhuluma ngamandau kuthiwa mafufunyana. Yebo. Even umguni is not a thing. Eastern Cape, yebo, because they are used to isiXhosa. And igqirha lesiXhosa yilo igqirha. The rest are just spirits, which would be fired upon, prayed upon, ziphume zihambe. But when you are all encompassing, when you have an inclusive mindset and an inclusive perspective and an inclusive experience, you want to ask, yini amadlozi wami orientate towards a certain dimension and not a certain dimension. And as you were saying, I mean, I want to address this one, yokudakwa nokuphuza ezangomeni. And my observation is this, and I'm only going to spend a minute on it, to say people struggle to fit in, and alcohol is very convenient in dealing with that problem for Izango. Sometimes due to ego, sometimes due to whatever. I mean, I've seen people who do not accept that Ukobela has a higher stance than Itwasa in that setup. And amadolo wabo literally lock up when they have to kneel in front of Ukobela. Unless sitsakiwe. I must dagiwe, we can do whatever. Magati azishe ziyasha. And we don't think a lot about I'm a junior to this senior. I'm this abanganibamba semoli ngiseskupini. We don't think about a lot of those things. We just drink and be merry. Unfortunately, with alcohol, it does other things, and it does certain things as well. And the most unfortunate part about alcohol is that it switches off a lot of your receptors, physically and spiritually. So about Tagiwe, and we are in a spiritual space, you're not picking up a lot of things. And sometimes you're not even picking up your own self-awareness. Izinto zenza I was born. So uva ngathi sesikutshela ukuthi kodwa Mkhulu, izolo Mkhulu. Hey, Mkhulu.
But go naye bengisedlozini. That is the thing.
Well, convenient excuse, whatever that means.
I said all of those things, it wasn't me, but good close. And you were drunk. And then, unfortunately, then the people out there, you also have the tendency to be able to say things that you are scared to say you're sober.
Which you are switched off. Awareness is not.
Yes. And then now, you excuse those, you attribute those things to it. And then the people who are sitting there, who are looking at you as the healer, and looking at you for expecting messages, even think that is what it was. And it was just you being drunk, and Bantu now take that on umntwana bebantu take that on as word and they run with it as a message that libuya edlotini. That libuya from a drunk person who just now was able to say the things that they are not able to say mabasob, and that have nothing to do with it. It's a sad reality. For me now, this is really for me. Because it's also the cornerstone abuse. Abusing is because bayanatha nalabantu lababitwa kubatoshayela tangoma banika tshwala kuyafusekiswana abantwana bebantu babitwa all sorts of things. It's because these people are drunk.
I'm so grateful. I got a sober Kobela. I mean, we've got multiple Kobelas, nobody. But I'm so grateful that they are sober when we are in that space. I don't know when we are outside, but when we are in that space, they are very sober. They are very sober-minded. And I'm so grateful for that experience, because I don't think I would have survived some of the things this is Bonalanga Pandle with regards to Uchwala. But when I go, I do want us to take it back to Uchwala is a convenient way of dealing with a lot of frustrations and trauma, zobungoma. And until there is, in-depth and comprehensive healing, I mean, Uchwala is becoming more cheaper, more accessible, with different variations. So it's going to become more and more. In as much as now it's part of culture, people go to Zangoma expecting to get drunk, because that's where you get Uchwala, and for free, if not for a very low, fee. But I think we, as abantu abalapayo, we have to look into the situation and see how can we contribute to a much more conducive space, ourselves first, but also nabantu esisebenza nabo. I know mina la engithosa khona masafika, yebo, yayingaphathwa into yotshwala until kuze kuthiwa thokoza msila wengwezu jika, and then that's when you saw people with alcohol. Nakhona ugobela mageza ngapha azodlula ngapha, they would go around the house bambaleka, because they did not want to be seen as izangoma ezinxilayo. But right now, once Wakali's group, it's almost, a part of the same, picture, to say there has to be izangoma, madlozi, and then Uchwala. And abanye abantu, they get it so confused, they come to Simenjalo and discover the alternative, and then they go sit somewhere else, maybe outside the yard, to say, and I'm not mentioning that in a way of tina because makunywa ngezangoma and the culture of alcoholism ezangomeni, nami I'm branded with the same take. I get the very same pain nami ukuthi uyisangoma, it means kuyaphuza yabona laphayana, and I have to kind of look at it from that perspective. But in my view, alcohol is just an easy way out. And I've seen abantu, if you sit with them, as a zangoma, we can pick up most energy. You sit with someone and you feel good, yeah, there's a lot of heavy pain here. And then once you get into ezbandayo, and then you're like, but uchinchile man lo muntu. So for me, I'm sensing a thing, it means this person on a normal day, they're in a lot of pain. But once they touch alcohol, then they're able to, for that limited time, forget the pain.
But then what is the implication for Lesis Kwama? Because then how do we then lapa Lesis Kwama? What's the implication for the next person who's going to receive Lesis Kwama? What is the implication for Lesis Kwama itself? Because then at the end of the day, irresponsibility to Esesangoma is to heal, and sihila njani, sihila ngalesis kwama. That so
and
that
being
is-
forward looking is very important.
it has to be. We can't not be forward looking, because we're not only just meant to heal now, we're meant to heal
In the future as well. We facilitate that, later healing in the future. I think when I go, what we can do, as I said before, us ourselves through our own behavior, we have to, do it a little bit better, if there's such a thing. But if there's spaces where we can highlight, raise awareness to say, hey, there's this association Nobungoma, which is not the best way to do it. Let's look at an alternative. I always guard against judging, because you don't know how people got to where they are. But obviously, you don't want to say, I don't want to judge, but I want to look away. We sort of into
you can't look away.
But for now, I think our best attempt would be, let's raise awareness and model the behavior ourselves, to say, mina ngisangoma esingabuthinta utshwala.
And then
Yeah. And if we have tinta utshwala, separate. There's this cut utshwala, there's this cut sokwenza umsebenzi amadlozi. I don't know because amadlozi are 24-hour, 7 days a week business. Where will you find the time for a dope? But you have to model it. You can't say esangomeni, hey, niyanxila, and then as soon as ubheka ngapha uthathela class, and then say, okay, because bona banxila in public or in private, it means you're a better one. We have to look at those dynamics on Gogo. But the biggest thing is model it when yourself, to say, okay, when you sang messenger,
babuye abantwana bathwasa abantwana bedlozi, and not have the traumatic experience, because getting to actually even getting to Butwasa, there's been so much trauma, and we are just there looking for healing. Let's not then sibanigete more trauma and then they are not healed. And then also that also leads to, it leads also not just the beatings, the rape that comes to Gamatwasa.
Which is disgusting.
Gwende bungoma bube kuba into lembi. That is why Neguti, when Pandogoguti back then, it was associated Dogbola and witchcraft and what, because of Christianity and religion that was brought into the space, and this is what informed our parents. It's also now viewed as a bad thing because of the things that happen and the experiences that happen. It's good. It's not just about healing. It's also about trauma. Instead of healing that trauma that comes with just the awakening itself, there's the trauma now that you actually experience in trying to gutata leso sikhwama thatha umsebenzi wabantu abadala, which is really should not be what it is. Bantu futhi bangene lapha, they get healing, bathatha isikhwama bahambe bayonda umsebenzi wabantu abadala, bakhona ukuwenda ngelithando, so that also we change the view and the perspective of society ngetangoma, and not just tangoma, but more importantly about the sacred craft, about the sacred gift that we have been given, not for us, but to heal society, to heal the community, to heal the world as far as our ancestors know it.
The perception of Ubungoma, and maybe the experience later when you hand over isikhwama samadlozi, is largely dependent on the behavior that you yourself model. I don't like the fact that I'm made responsible for the behavior as izangoma, to say, so if izangoma associated no chwala, therefore it's my responsibility to clean up that image. It's not my responsibility. If bafuna uphuza abantu benza umsebenzi wamadlozi, they can do that. I'm going to do that which I decide to do ngesikhwama samadlozi. That's one thing. But I always have this picture in my head of umntwana 5, 6, because I inherited isikhwama 7 generations ago. Sasekhaya. Mkhulu wathi kimi, he died 1728. And 1728, So he keeps on saying, what is this, what is this, what is this? But the main thing is I always have that view to say, lo muntu ozothatha lesikhwama, what type of memory would they be inheriting, and how much of it, will be of my doing? Meaning, are they going to get a luggage set with everything, tunywa, mguni, ndawu, everything packed nicely there to say, this is how you palazisa idliso, everything in one package, and how can I behave today to make sure that that intention is realized? So, makuthwasiswa kulashwa, I always sort of like reconcile myself to say how much of my behavior, talks to the person looking at me or the person inheriting his karma, seeing ubungoma, And I don't announce myself as Isangoma in most cases. People are always shocked. I mean, coming here to Afro City was quite a big decision because a lot of people who are in my space, whether it's work or whatever, they don't know what is Isangoma. And that's because you'd hardly ever see any element of ubungoma. And that's why when people walk into Indumba and they find this person like, but what here? We hello? And then through the consultation and the interaction, they're like, oh, I know, this is it. Because I always make it my responsibility to project the type of Sangoma that I would have wanted to receive healing from. And then the type of umnikazi wesikhwama I would have wanted to receive his khwama from. Other people are happy with, dog's breakfast on the table, but that's their choice. Mina, I have my own choice to make, and now as Isangoma out there, you need to realize, if you were to inherit a khwama, what would you rather have, and are you willing to work towards that so that the next person gets this khwama you would have liked to receive? If you were to receive healing, what type of Sangoma would you like to heal you? And are you resembling some of those characteristics as you behave as a Sangoma on a daily basis? The other thing is, a lot of people are cyclical in that they teach how they were taught. It's that whole thing of parents raising kids how they were raised. And sometimes when they gaps, making it a point to raise the awareness to kids. I mean, who cares? We're not there. If you are being dismissive, but your experience obviously contributed to you being here now. But it doesn't mean you have to be cyclical and teach how you were taught. And this is where, this is one meeting point we embrace Mina no Kobela is that his experience of a Ephetweni is totally different to the experience he gives us as a Matwasawake Ephetweni. And he makes it a point to say, this is what happened to me, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen to you. Right? And then when he tells the story, you're like, how did you survive that? And why would you not want to teach how you were taught? Abanye abantu would even, go to extremes to make sure that I create an enhanced experience of the trauma I experienced ephetweni. Sashaywa thina sivuswa kuseni yena ke uthi mangalalwa nokulalwa yabona makuthini. I mean, why do you need to continue that behavior? And again, it talks to, okay, are you aware, what is your role here? Are you aware, first and foremost, what you isango? Your responsibility is ukulapa. And are you actually doing lokulapa lo? But those are some of the things we can bring to the awareness of Abu and Mkhulu to say, reconcile yourself. And if you can't do it by yourself, have someone external to say, how am I doing? Whether if you have a partner, if you have kids, if you have, ask them on a regular basis, how am I doing? Am I paddling correctly? Am I lapping correctly? Am I, how is this part of behavior contributing?
What's your experience of me?
And I have young kids, 6, 3, who always mimic when they play into zobungoma. And for me, that's my feedback. To say, if abantwana bebangibone ngithuka amathwasa, I'm sure bebazawudlala ngokuthuka amathwasa. But instead mabadlala bayavumisa inyongo yami njalo vumani bo siyavuma. Then and you can see from option babo, from a 3-year-old, as avumisa adlala, like they get into character of labantu ababone bavumisa, and you don't see any pain in their face. They're like, oh, it means Maraibona, it did not have that element. Otherwise, I would be seeing it in their face. Then I make it a point to ask, hey man, Gogo, what did you think of whatever? People always give feedback, especially Ukobela, I always go back and ask, are we doing good? Are we doing well? And because I'm not attached to a lot of ego characteristics, when they say, I ubedile, I'm like, Togoza. And then I go back and say, okay, and that's why, when it's time to sing, I'm there. When it's time to beat the drums, I'm there. When it's time to do all of these other things, I don't want to, find myself not serving in a space where we're supposed to be serving.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Busiso Wagwasbego. Ngizalwa kaMazia koGembe koGamana Mpilo komCusi. Ngendabuko ngiqhamuka enhlangano emakhosini eSwatini. Ngikhulele ekuruleni eIsrand. I've been around Davidton, Tsakane, but mainly Tsakane. Gogo, uMavuso wasebhadini eDumbe. Bomama ke kunabo Shabalala, kunabo Sithole, kunabo Mayaba. Ngizalwa yilabo bantu labo. So that's my heritage. I'm a family man. I've got unkosikazi, I've got kids, as I said. That's me, the biological Sibusiso. And in terms of spirit, as you know, ngithwasile umnguni, ngithwasile umndawu. I prefer just to mention igama ledlozi, which is used the most, which is Mahlalentabeni. Yeah, I've got Mandawu, I've got Mahlambulula izithunywa. I also, will be delving into a bit of Amakhosi, Amagedle, you see, luggage set. And I think on a psychological level, I'd like to think, I like to liken myself to the baobab tree in terms of life perspective, in that, I'm very open-minded, but I like to get deep into, ideas, but not get attached to them. And just like the baobab tree does, is it as soon as it roots, it starts sending beams of energy to say we need water here. So if you were to plant it anywhere, over time there'll be a river stream running, because it calls water through. And what it does is it bulks up in the stem to maintain water to feed to the rest of the plants around it. So that's my perspective of life, to say we should always strive to be in that manner, in that we call life energy to spaces that we always find ourselves in. And when we can learn and share with people around us, we must do. And that's how I prefer to go through life. I acknowledge when I go, I don't know a lot. As I said to you, 10 degrees, none of them beyond, the second year. But I would really, 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 really like to hand over isikhwama. Ngiyibona legacy when I die, whatever. But I would like to hand over isikhwama that will make lo muntu osamukelayo to be one of those profound healers, where just by being in their presence, you are healed because of the energy they exhume, let alone amayeza wabo, their knowledge, And this is the person I'd like to hand over his kwama to. To say, to serve in such a way that the person who inherits his kwama, whenever that is, is actually empowered by his kwama. In all dimensions of their lives, empowered. That is it, Gogo.